Shanghai has this pattern, of course, which is true of New York City. It's true of many cities in which you have a port first, you have a place of trade, and then industry follows that.
Yes.
And you mentioned textiles, which is certainly one of the dominant industries. Garment production as well is presumably large. What are the other great industries that are being founded, and who is founding?
Okay, it's also a heavy industrial city, and this is government-led. One of the first major arsenals is started by the Qing court in Shanghai, in the southern part of Shanghai. Parts of it are still there today, because Shanghai is a place where you get Western expertise, Western advisors. Krupp and other German companies invested and sent advisors to start what you might call the munitions industry of modern China, beginning in the 1870s.
So even though you might have thought that Beijing was the more natural place to build a munitions factory, you built it in Shanghai because that's where the human capital
That's where the human capital is, and about 70% of the industrial capital of China in the 1920s is in the greater Shanghai area.
And this is also, I guess at the same time, or slightly later, large amounts of Japanese industrialists are starting there as well.
Absolutely. The richest man in China, a guy named Rong Zongjing, comes to Shanghai from his hometown in Wuxi. His father had been multi-generations in the silk industry, very successful. But Rong Zongjing comes, raises money from international banks, starts cotton mills, sugar mills, a whole range of different light industries, 30 or 40 different companies, extraordinarily successful, because Shanghai is his base, even though 80% of his upper-end employees remain from Wuxi, because those are people you can trust. Shanghai is a melting pot of different parts of China who speak different dialects and who come together to form a new kind of community in Shanghai. All the bankers seem to come from Ningbo to the south. So when you ask one of your students today, where are you from? And they say, I'm from Shanghai. That's because they don't know their family's history. You go back 3 or 4 generations, almost no one, 4 or 5 generations, almost no one is actually from Shanghai. It becomes a melting pot of China and becomes a place of extraordinary energy.
We have to leave, I think, the bright days of the 1920s when everything's mixing, and things go a little bit off in the 1930s, and then there's a process of rebuilding after that. If you can just tell us a little bit about the Japanese occupation. And
So the Japanese, of course, the war begins in Shanghai. And the war begins in Shanghai in part because the Chinese bring the war to Shanghai, because that's where they are strongest, where Chiang Kai-shek, the national government leader, is strongest in 1937. And the hope is to defeat the Japanese where they are comparatively weak. They're much stronger in North China. But it's a series of devastating defeats for China. Shanghai becomes not the international settlements yet. Only after Pearl Harbor did the Japanese occupy them. But at that point on, from 1941 on, it's under Japanese occupation. Life goes on. Many Shanghai businesses move with the national government to southwest China. Others have no choice but to stay. It's like being in occupied France, as it were. There are many moral choices to be made. The Japanese occupation of Shanghai is nowhere near as brutal as it would be of Hong Kong or many other cities. In 1945, the nationalists come back, only to lose the country to the communists in 1949.
Right.
Now, our learners may have seen the movie Empire of the Sun. So if you see that movie, this is set in Shanghai in 1937. It was shot in Shanghai in 1987, and I was living in Shanghai when it was shot. They had to avoid only one building on the skyline to have the exact same skyline. That's because nothing new in Shanghai, in downtown Shanghai, had been built from 1937 to 1987. So communism, as it took over in China, was a great preservative.
Right.
Nothing new was built. And the difference of Shanghai in 1987 to 1937 is it's simply dirtier and less well maintained.
My mother had this experience in the late 80s as well, that she went back to see that she'd lived in Shanghai immediately after the war, and she had no problem finding the house that she had lived in, which was essentially untouched 40 years later. So you've just painted a picture of sort of 40 years of a physically static city, although it's probably worth stressing during this time, Shanghai is still a huge city. It's still a huge
So it
number of people,
industrializes all around.
Changing.
It becomes a center of industry. It's heavily taxed. It's the richest city in China, and of course it's a capitalist city historically. So the communists don't really trust it, and they tax the hell out of it in the first 3 decades of the PRC. And so there's very little left to invest in Shanghai. And it's, when you think of how this city has changed since the late 80s.
It's absolutely incredible the way the change has occurred. If you can just tell us a little bit about the decision of Deng Xiaoping to start opening up southern cities in the 1980s.
Deng Xiaoping is, without question, the most pragmatic of leaders in the PRC era. And he knows that China doesn't have to be as poor as it is when he comes back to power and really becomes number one in late 1978, early 1979. Mm-hmm. He tries many ways of getting things going, and he oversees, he is not the architect of China's reforms. Mm-hmm. Zhao Ziyang, Hu Yaobang, in particular, are the ones that allow this, but he permits this to happen. Mm-hmm. And when serious economic reform stalls after Tiananmen, and when the party clamps down on virtually any type of activity that it deems threatening to party rule, including private enterprise, he sees the need to restart it by going, in some ways, like Chairman Mao before him, outside of regular channels to take a trip to the south to signal, basically, as the number one leader, what is permitted and what is not. And he goes to the south in so-called southern tour, Nanxun, mimicking what the Qianlong Emperor had done in the 18th century. Goes all the way to Guangdong, to the city of Shenzhen, and urges there and elsewhere for people to open up, to experiment, that it's okay to get rich. Some people will get richer before others. And if one compares the Shenzhen of 1992, when Deng Xiaoping visited there, compared to today, it has an extraordinary catalytic impact.